In the news tonight, His Majesty the King and the Japanese Prime Minister hold talks in Amman and co-chair a meeting of businessmen to review the scopes of investment and economic cooperation between the two countries. Israel threatens to lobby members in the International Criminal Court to cut their funding to the court in response to its launch of an inquiry into possible war crimes in the Palestinian territories. And Ukrainians rally for peace and for the victims of the conflict raging in the east of the country that has killed some 4,800 people. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news. Jordan-Japanese relation, namely in the investment and economic sectors, as well as the situation in the region and joint world effort to confront terrorism, were at the center of talks between His Majesty the King and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe here in Amman today. In the presence of the two leaders, a meeting of businessmen from both countries also discussed the investment climate in Jordan, an incentive offered to foreign and multinational companies, as well as project open for joint ventures. Another meeting co-chaired by Abe and Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour reviewed areas of cooperation between the two countries. Here's more.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe held talks in Amman today as part of a regional tour including Egypt, the West Bank and Israel. His Majesty King Abdullah received Abe at the Husseiniya Palace, where they discussed bilateral ties, enhanced cooperation especially in the economic and political fields, regional issues, as well as the fight against extremism and radicalism. On welcoming the Japanese official, His Majesty stressed the strong historic ties between Jordan and Japan.
We greatly appreciate your presence and the presence of your delegation, not only in Jordan, but the tour that you are doing through the region. Japan has had a historical presence in this region, one as an honest broker, and Japan has always been looked at in such high esteem because of all the good role that you have played for many peoples in this region. We have all greatly appreciated the historic support that Jordan has received from your country and your people, and even more recently the support that your country has given us through our challenges of Syrian refugees, as well as your role that you have played in the peace process. And I know that there are many challenges facing the region, but again I think this new level of partnership between Japan and Jordan will strengthen the relationship between our two countries as we face the next level of challenges.
The talks also touched upon the global challenges in the fight against terrorism.
Today, what brings Japan and Jordan together is the global threat of international terrorism, and I believe that working hand in hand, this will solidify our relationship. And this is the challenge of this generation. And I believe that there is a lot of work to do between our two countries, as with many countries around the world. And I think this will actually be of tremendous significance. Your Excellency, you as Prime Minister are in the right place at the right time for your country and for the world. And I would just like to again thank your presence here, not only in Jordan but in the region, at a time where we really need the presence of Japan in the Middle East.
Abe warned that extremism is a growing threat to many countries and needs to be stopped, and commended Jordan's efforts in confronting the terrorist group Daesh, pledging to extend Japan's non-military assistance to Jordan, as well as offering a new tranche of aid to help the Syrian refugees.
Jordan plays a big role in ensuring regional peace and stability, such as your efforts in fighting IS, and also receiving a large number of Syrian refugees, and to support Jordan's stability. We will continue our non-military assistance.
Abe and Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour co-chaired a meeting of senior officials as well as businessmen to review scopes of economic cooperation between the two countries. During the meeting, a letter of intent was signed between Jordan's Ministry of Energy and Mitsubishi Corporation, which owns and operates the fourth private generating station project to generate electricity using solar cells. Another agreement was signed to carry out the Shams Ma'an project, which will be the largest solar power project in the Middle East with an investment of up to $160 million.
Jordan is a country of cornerstone of the peace and stability of the Middle East is vitally important. That is our understanding. And last year we marked about 60 years anniversary of the diplomatic relations. And further 60 years, we like to develop more in an economic way to further tighten the relations for two countries.
Capitalizing on the historic ties between Japan and Jordan, further strengthened during His Majesty the King's visit to Tokyo in November, Abe's visit comes to demonstrate his country's support to the kingdom, a model of moderation in the Middle East. Nancy Khair for the news at 10.
The Japanese Prime Minister and his accompanying delegation later left for Israel, where he met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Jerusalem. It is the first visit by a Japanese Prime Minister to Israel in 9 years. Abe is expected to call on both Israel and the Palestinians to find a way to resume peace talks. He was also to urge Israel to refrain from any actions or remarks which could escalate the confrontation with the Palestinians. Abe will meet Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas on Tuesday in the West Bank city of Ramallah. Meanwhile, the Japanese Prime Minister's spouse, Akiya Abe, called on a community-based rehabilitation center for people with disabilities in the Hittin camp in Rusaifa. Akiya Abe was briefed about the center's activities that focus on helping the disabled recognize their rights and integrating them with the local community. She also viewed a short documentary on the center's philosophy and activities. Representatives from the various initiatives that offered voluntary service during the blizzard, including Jordan's Snow Rescue Team, Jordan Volunteer Takaful, Jordan 4x4 Club, Hand in Hand Let's Help, and What You Need, We Need, meet with Her Majesty Queen Rania, who praised the work they contributed alongside public agencies. Queen Rania praised the effort of the public and private sectors, as well as the individuals and volunteers who invested their own time to help out. She also conveyed His Majesty King Abdullah's appreciation for their efforts, commending their professionalism and sense of responsibility. The group of volunteers helped during the snowstorm in opening roads, as well as other rescue operations, first aid support, and the distribution of in-kind donation to families in need. The group operated inside and outside Amman and relied on social media platform for coordination with the public, as well as through the Civil Defense Department and various radio and TV stations. Israel is lobbying member states of the International Criminal Court to cut funding for the court in response of its launch of an inquiry into possible war crimes in the Palestinian territories. Israeli Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman said if the ICC does not change its decision, Israel hopes to dent funding from the court that is drawn from the 122 member states in accordance with the size of their economies. The issue of the ICC topped the agenda during talks between Lieberman and Canadian Foreign Minister John Baird. While in Ramallah for talks with his Palestinian counterpart, Palestinians demonstrated against Canada's position and heckled Baird and threw eggs at him, one hitting his car. And in a statement, top Palestinian peace negotiator Saeb Eriqat demanded an apology from Baird for visiting Israeli officials in occupied East Jerusalem last year. In a joint statement to the media, Baird expressed full support to Israel.
I reiterated Canada's opposition to the Palestinian Authority's actions both at the UN Security Council and with the International Criminal Court. Canada is very clear that these provocative, unilateral actions will not contribute to peace and security in the region.
We take the view that a peace process is and progress is best made at the negotiation table, not through unilateral actions on either side. We're proud of that position. We believe it's the best one, and don't apologize for it.
Over to Syria, where the Syrian wing of Al-Qaeda, the Nusra Front, said it shot down an army cargo plane carrying food and ammunition overnight in the northeastern part of the country. The Syrian state television, however, blamed the loss of the aircraft and its crew on bad weather. According to a military source, the cargo plane crashed due to weather conditions and heavy fog, while attempting to land at Abu Dhuhr military airport in Idlib province in the northwest of the country. The crew were killed. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said 35 people on board died when the plane hit an electricity pylon. And several Hezbollah members were killed when an Israeli helicopter fired 2 missiles in the Syrian province of Qneitra near the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights. One of those killed was the son of late military leader Imad Mghanniyeh, according to Lebanese sources. The sources said Jihad Mghanniyeh was killed with 4 other members of Hezbollah when his convoy was hit by the missiles. His father was assassinated in Damascus in 2008. Iran and major powers met in Geneva for a new round of talks over Tehran's long-standing nuclear program. This is the second meeting between the P5+1 and Iran after the parties failed to meet a November 24 deadline last year for a comprehensive nuclear deal. The negotiations were premised on prior bilateral engagements between the U.S. and Iran during the past 4 days. The meeting started with a one-day talk between U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry and his Iranian counterpart Mohammad Javad Zarif. Yesterday, Zarif expressed optimism about a solution to his country's nuclear issue, despite the fact that wide gaps between Tehran and the world powers remain. Iran has been a target of UN sanctions due to its alleged attempts to build nuclear weapons, but Iran insists its nuclear programs are for peaceful purposes only. The next round of talks has been set for early February. Thousands of Kiev residents gathered in the capital's Independence Square to pray for peace and the victims of a conflict raging in the country's east. Many people held signs reading Am Vonovaka, referring to the shelling of a civilian bus that killed 12, and an announcer named the victims. According to the World Health Organization, more than 4,800 people have been killed in the conflict between government troops and pro-Russian separatists, and Russian President Vladimir Putin is voicing concern at the escalation in the fighting. Here's more.
Ukrainian military forces are on the move in Donetsk. Racing through the countryside in Ukraine's brutal winter, the forces launched a military operation to retake the Donetsk airport. The military had lost territory around the airport to rebels in recent weeks. A military spokesman says the operation returns the battle lines to the previous status quo agreed to under a peace deal reached in September.
The decision was taken for a mass operation, which was successful. As you saw the information yesterday, we succeeded in almost completely cleaning the territory of the airport, which belongs to Ukrainian forces as marked by military separation lines.
As the operation continues, the death toll climbs. The military spokesman says 4 men were killed and 32 were wounded. He blames the separatists, accusing them of using heavy artillery.
The terrorists' attacks on Donetsk airport continue, which include the use of heavy artillery. In particular, yesterday, bandit groups were shooting multiple launch rocket systems right from residential areas.
The recent escalation has prompted concerns from Russian President Vladimir Putin. His spokesman says the violence is not conducive to resolving the conflict, which has killed more than 4,800 people.
U.S. President Barack Obama heads into his State of the Union address, facing a number of challenges. A Democrat president with a Republican-controlled Congress, just 2 years left in his term, and immense pressure to secure his legacy and position his party to win in 2016. In the weeks leading up to the President's State of the Union address, his first ever before a Republican-controlled Congress, Obama has attempted to frame the dialogue, threatening to veto several Republican-sponsored bills and exercising his executive authority. His tone is a turnabout from 2 years ago after his re-election, when he launched a charm offensive with key Republican lawmakers that largely went nowhere.
Well, the president's a double lame duck president. He is not only in his last 2 years of his administration, but he has divided party government. When you have divided party government, the opposition party controls the leadership, the agenda on the Hill. it's very hard to get anything done. There's a thing called presidential support scores. It's a measure of presidents saying what they want and getting things done. He's probably going to be in the 30 percentile, whereas in the first 2 years he set a record. He was at 97% of what he wanted, he got.
For generations, children have been enjoying comic books, captivated by their fantastical storylines and pictures, until recently this simple joy has been lost to visually impaired children. Because comic books contain such visual storylines, artists and writers have had a difficult time translating them into Braille until recently. In Mexico, writer and illustrator Jorge Bernardo Fernandez has created Senses, the universe of his eyes, which narrates the adventure of an astronaut who crash land on a planet inhabited by creatures with no eyes. The astronaut loses his sight, but aliens around him teach him how to see the world using other senses. Bernardo Fernandez, who is also visually impaired, said the purpose of the comic book was to raise awareness to the blind.
This is to create awareness among the population who do not have disabilities or visual disadvantages with regards to the challenges that people face every day. And finally, it's for social action. The sale for each one of these copies will go towards spectacles, a set of glasses for low-income children with visual handicaps.
The Air in Style series came to Innsbruck with crowds at the Bergisel Stadium able to watch snowboarding within the arena as competitors rode down a purpose-built scaffold ramp. The flood-lit 50 meters high, 150 meter long structure, so competitors like Olympic slope-slide gold medalist Sej Knotseberg of USA and Air in Style Beijing winner Emil Unselten of Norway. The main competition judged the contestant on trick execution, style and height. Norway's Thiel Stanberg was first with 81.89 points for executing a backside triple cork 1440 and a frontside 1080 indie grab. The judges gave second place to Petu Perjonen of Finland and third place to Yuki Kandano of Japan. Marcel Kittel of the Giant Alpecin team sprinted to win the People's Choice Classic in Adelaide, Australia, an evening race prelude to the Tour Down Understage race, which began on Tuesday. On the last of 30 laps in the 51-kilometer race, Giant Alpecin Cohen de Cord led out Kittel for the finish line. Despite challenges from the Spaniard Juan José Lobato of Movistar and Dutchman Wouter Whippert from Australia's Drapac, Kittel kept pulling away to the finish. And finally, cold and frosty weather prevails tonight, especially in the Badia and hilly areas. Tomorrow, a further rise in temperature is expected, but it remains relatively cold in most regions, but fair in the Jordan Valley. Winds will be southwesterly to southeasterly moderate. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect warm weather tomorrow with northerly moderate to brisk winds and calm seas. The weatherman warns of poor visibility due to fog. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. And to end the news, here's a recap of our top stories. His Majesty the King and the Japanese Prime Minister hold talks in Amman and co-chair a meeting of businessmen to review the scope of investment and economic cooperation between the two countries. Israel threatens to lobby members in the International Criminal Court to cut their funding to the court in response to its launch of an inquiry into possible war crimes in the Palestinian territories. And Ukrainians rally for peace and for the victim of the conflict raging in the east of the country that has killed some 4,800 people. And with this we come to an end. I'm Farah Ajlouni. Thank you for watching. Have a good night.